And hello to anyone who's out there. And welcome back. Seems such a long time since we were here. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes because we want to make sure that that people are with us. Thank you, Jill. Want to make sure that everybody's is back with us. Hello, Grace. Welcome back. And Dennis, and I'm not going to say hello to everybody, just can I say a general hello, welcome back. It's wonderful to have you with us. I was going to say thank goodness it's 2021, but we shall see. At least we're out of that year and starting on a whole new one. So I'll start with a few usual announcements. First of all, as I say, welcome back to everybody who's joining us, and I hope that everybody does join us. As you have noticed, we have a brand new platform. We did ask your opinions, we listened to you, we know that we had some problems with the previous platform. We are hoping that this one is much, much easier. And certainly we want to hear your thoughts on it. The platform is easier to access. You don't have to register, and also all the webinars will be available on our YouTube channel, so that accessing videos you miss or webinars you miss should be a lot easier. And the replay, like today's webinar, will be available as before 24 hours after we finish. But it'll be on our YouTube channel. And speaking of our YouTube channel, one of the ways that you can keep up with what we're planning and what we're up to is by logging into our YouTube channel. You can see the webinars, you get information, it's all there. Either our website or the YouTube channel. So I want to make sure that, that what we're doing now with this new platform is okay with everybody. We can't please everybody, God knows, but we will try to do our very best. But let us know if you found it easier, if you found it harder, if you have problems, if you really love it, just let us know. Send us an email, because the only way we can find out how you feel is by you telling us. End of year financial appeal. For those of you who donated, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. We set ourselves a somewhat high target to reach, and we have reached it, which is a testament not just to us but to you, our supporters. Thank you for your donations. And if you didn't manage to donate before Christmas, it's never too late. More about that later. But thank you all. It was really wonderful. And I'll tell you a bit more about that afterwards. But the time now being nearly 5 past, we're going to make a start on today's webinar. And today's webinar is based on the play Julius Caesar, The Politics of Power, which in many ways is almost an oxymoron. Politics is power, and power is politics. And Shakespeare understood it incredibly well. So one of the things I want to look at, I'm not going to break the whole play down. I want to look at certain aspects of the politics of power, and the power particularly of the word, the power of oratory. Now, oratory is a gift that is denied to many, the capacity to stand up and speak and use words. It's a gift, and not everybody has it, but it is an essential gift for any aspiring public figure. Many without the gift, there are many politicians the world over who do not have the natural power of oratory to be able to speak impromptu on the topics they want. So they get others to write it for them. Some are born with it. The famous Irish playwright Richard Brinsley Sheridan was not just a famous playwright, but he was a very famous and very influential politician, and he had that gift of oratory. Many, as I say, will get people to write speeches for them. There are Adolf Hitler, for instance, actually did employ an actor to teach him how to speak. And he wasn't the only one who's done that. Many a politician has employed actors to teach them skills of oratory. And it's important because it's all very well to have wonderful ideas or even dangerous ideas, but without the skill to convince others, you are helpless. You become a voice crying in the wilderness. And we are always remembered, when I say we, particularly politicians are always remembered by what they say as much as what they do, and sometimes more for what they say than what they do. We can all recognize simple phrases that have become almost part of everyday speech, such as ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. These are phrases that are an absolute part of, I mean, everybody knows them. They may not even know who the politician was who first said them, but you know the phrases. Never before in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. These are not just picked out of the air. They're not random use of words. They are constructed and deliberate use of words. They are part of the skill of oratory. Words are powerful. I might actually go so far as to say words are power. Let's go back to the 1930s, and I mentioned Adolf Hitler made his nation go to war by the power of his rhetoric. If you watch those huge rallies, even if you can't speak German, you can actually understand, you can feel the power of rhetoric. When, again, back in the 1930s, when many in Britain were ready to appease Hitler, when Britain was ready to say, okay, let him have Europe, Churchill used words to change their mind. I'm going to quote him again. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. And everybody's heard this one. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. These were not words picked out of the air. This is the use of oratory. This is the use of structuring the way you speak to the masses to convince them of your argument. So, what has all this got to do with Shakespeare's Julius Caesar? To my mind, Julius Caesar is one of Shakespeare's finest, greatest plays. And for once with Shakespeare, it actually follows actual history to a far greater degree than many of the so-called history plays. I always think that the great history plays, the Henriade, that cycle of plays from Richard II through to Richard III, are more political plays than actual history. Julius Caesar is both, because it follows the historical facts of what actually happened and uses that historical structure to demonstrate its thesis. Its potency as a play lies not just in the fact that it is reasonably historically accurate, but in its examination of political power, of political manipulation, the power of words and the effect that they can have. After all, if words had no effect, advertising would be a complete impossibility. All too often, we are willing to believe what we are told through the power of words. And be honest about it. How many things do you, and I'm pointing at you all and me as well, how many things do you buy because you believed the commercial? How many things do you regret having bought because you believed the commercial? And why did you believe the commercial? Because the words sounded right. They even sounded true. Because you chose to believe them, because of the power of the rhetoric, because of the power of those words, focused your mind on a simple idea. Buy it now. You should see my house. It's full of stuff I regret buying, but I am a victim of advertising just like anybody else. My house is not all books. You might think it is from looking behind me, but oh no, there's an immense amount of rubbish simply because I believed the words that were told me. So, words have power. Shakespeare understood this. Shakespeare would not be still presented 400 years later if he hadn't understood the power and use of words. And it is his understanding of that, his capacity not only to create oratory, to put those words into the mouth of his characters, but to recognize it when he heard it. Because again, you don't grasp it out of the air. You write, and Shakespeare was a contemporary writer in his time and was affected by what was going on around him. He lived in a particularly volatile political time when the wrong words in the wrong place by the wrong person could have dreadful consequences. And it had been like that for the entire Tudor period. The Tudor kings and queens, and remember, he was writing at the end of the Tudor period, but it wasn't a long dynasty. And those Tudors, from King Henry VII through King Henry VIII, through Edward, through Mary, and then through Elizabeth, only 5 kings and queens. That entire period was dangerous. And it was dangerous because the Tudor dynasty had usurped the throne, had usurped the crown from the Plantagenets. So there were constant plots against them from home. They'd also shifted from Catholicism through Henry remained a Catholic all his life, even though he took control of the church in England. But through Edward, and then back to Mary, the staunch Catholic, and then back to Elizabeth, the Protestant. So Elizabeth herself was constantly under threat, not only from within, but from without. So it was a volatile period where words mattered, and what you said had to be very carefully weighed, because if you said it wrong, the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person, you could end up with your head on the block or your guts being pulled out as you were hung, drawn, and quartered. Or you could be burnt. Let's put it this way, it wasn't a safe time to say the wrong thing. But anyway, let's get back to the play. The play itself is set in Rome, as we know, 44 BC, or BCE, if you prefer that terminology. Now, we know the play concerns the assassination of Julius Caesar and all of that kind of thing. But that's not what the fundamental theme is. The fundamental theme concerns a moral dilemma. And the moral dilemma is, should one remove a potential dictator before he or she can become all-powerful? And that is a question that has been asked throughout history. The ancient Egyptians had that problem. Every society, every civilization that has built up a moral code has come up against this one moral question. And I come back to Adolf Hitler. Would it have been better if somebody had gone off and shot him before he could bring the whole world into a cataclysmic war? That dilemma it's a moral dilemma that is fundamental to the body politic, to civilization, to society. It's one that is constantly being asked. And it was a question that Shakespeare chose to ask with this particular play. In the play, Brutus, who is the adopted son of Julius Caesar, joins a conspiracy led by Cassius to murder Julius Caesar to prevent him becoming a dictator of Rome and destroying the Republic. And that action leads to a civil war that actually destroys the very Republic that Brutus wanted to protect. So Shakespeare is in fact doing a wonderful examination of the consequences of making a choice within that moral dilemma. Had they chosen otherwise, would the Republic have fallen? By the virtue of the choice they made, the Republic did fall. And you then had Imperial Rome, started not by Julius Caesar, but by his other adopted son, Augustus or Octavian. So you're looking at a question of what's the correct answer. And the correct answer is there isn't one. That's the trouble with humanity. Nothing in life, and particularly in Shakespeare, is ever as easy as it seems. Now, I'm not going to dissect the entire play today, I'm going to come back to it on a later webinar later in the year, because I think it's a really important play, and it's also a brilliant play, and I want to be able to break it down a little bit more later in the year, but that's for the future. What I want to do today is simply examine how the power of words can change people's minds and their attitudes. This is a webinar about the word. Shakespeare understood this power, and from his own observation of the times he was living in. So what I want to do is examine two particular speeches and one short scene to demonstrate my point. And as always, as I always say, everything I tell you may be wrong. But I encourage you to read the play, as I always do, and particularly these scenes, and to see what you think. And if you disagree with me, or even if you agree with me, let me know, because that's what this is about, discourse. So, to begin with, let us be quite clear that the Caesar in this play, and probably in historical fact as well, was a very arrogant and highly self-opinionated despot. He describes himself very clearly. Shakespeare gives him one speech that absolutely is his opinion of himself. I am as constant as the northern star, of whose true fixed and resting quality there is no fellow in the firmament. The skies are painted with unnumbered sparks, they are all fire, and every one doth shine, but there's but one in all doth hold his place. So in the world, 'tis furnished well with men, and men are flesh and blood, and apprehensive, yet in the number I do know but one, that unassailable holds on his rank, unshaken of motion. And that I am he. So his absolute belief in himself, that he was the center of the universe. He was born to be a despot. He was a very successful general. He was a very powerful general. He had aristocratic background. He had everything going for him, and there's no reason why he wouldn't have been a great consul of Rome. But his attitude towards himself was that I am the center of the world. Modesty, shall we say, was not his strong point, and it cost him his life. So, Caesar is dead. There has been an assassination by the conspirators led by Cassius and by Brutus. And most importantly, it was Brutus who gave the final thrust, another of those great lines, Et tu, Brute, and you, Brutus. And what follows the assassination is actually the most dangerous part of the coup, because that's what it is. The actual coup itself, the actual assassination of Caesar, is only the beginning. That's almost the easy part. What you do afterwards is the hard bit. The mob, or crowd, or populace, or citizenry, if you like to be polite, the mob were on the side of Caesar. He was their hero. He was the great man. The conspirators have just killed the people's hero. So what do they do next? Someone has to tell them why it was necessary and convince the mob that it was a good idea. That's obviously the next step. You do this terrible act, and then you have to convince everybody who thinks it was a terrible act that it wasn't. So who did the mob trust most? Brutus. Why? Because he was Caesar's adopted son. So there's an ambivalence there. He's got a bit of middle ground he can work in. And out he goes to address the crowd, the citizenry, or as I prefer to call them, the mob. Now, we're going to look at this speech first. Note the way the words he uses to gain their attention. And note also that Shakespeare writes this particular speech in prose. It is, if you like, more prosaic than what is to come later. Shakespeare is quite deliberate when he shifts from verse. A lot of people think, oh, Shakespeare is all verse. No, it's not. In certain plays, the vast majority is in prose. But he uses that shift from prose to verse very, very deliberately. And as I say, Brutus's address to the multitude is more prosaic, and that's the phrase I use, than what is to come. It's almost flatter. It's almost matter of fact. And in terms of his oratory, it's the first point of how he will be compared to what follows. But he addresses the mob very cleverly. It is a remarkable piece of oratory. He begins, Romans, countrymen, and lovers. Lovers in the sense of we all love one another because we are Romans and countrymen. Romans, countrymen, and lovers. Hear me for my cause and be silent that you may hear. Look at the way those words work. He uses words to equate himself with the citizens. I'm one of you, Romans, countrymen, and lovers. And then he tells them to shut up. He doesn't ask them, he tells them. Be silent that you may hear. First mistake. It's not going to lose the argument, it's just worth noting. Believe me for mine honor. Asking them to believe him, rather than going straight to the point. And have respect to mine honor that you may believe. Believe me because I am who I am. Mine honor is my person, my soul. This is me, my dignity, my position, my rank. Because I am me, believe me. Sense you me in your wisdom and awake your senses that you may be the better judge. So he tells them to believe him and then offers himself to their judgment, having told them that they should believe him. Bit iffy that. If there be any in this assembly, any dear friend of Caesar's, to him I say that Brutus' love to Caesar was no less than his. In other words, if you like Caesar, I liked him every bit as much as you did. If you admired Caesar, I admired him every bit as much as you did. If then that friend demand why Brutus rose against Caesar, this is my answer. And this is so clever. This is brilliant. Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Words of power. I am a true citizen, and what I did for Rome. Even though I killed the man who was my adoptive father and had looked after me and cared for me, and I loved him and I admired him, Rome was more important. I did it for Rome. Then he asked the question, had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves than that Caesar were dead to live all free men? That's a very clever move. Shakespeare really did listen to politicians and to speeches. He understood the way these things worked. It's a brilliant piece of oratory there. Because the answer is obvious. Would you rather have Caesar and be a slave, or not have Caesar and be free? Notice he doesn't offer the third option, which is that maybe if Caesar were there, they could still be free men. No, it's an either-or situation. And that is one of the great rules of oratory. To give, if you're going to use oratory for political power, you ask questions that can only have one possible answer. He goes on. As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, I honor him. Very noble sentiments. Wonderful things to say about the person you just killed. But then he puts in, as it were, the killer thrust. But as he was ambitious, I slew him. I liked him for the good things. I liked him for his fortune. I was wonderful that he was a hero and valiant, terrific. But he was ambitious, and therefore he had to die. He goes on. There is tears for his love, joy for his fortune, honor for his valor, and death for his ambition. I love this. Who is here so base that would be a bondsman? If any, speak for him I have offended. If you are happy to be a slave, I'm really sorry I've offended you. Who is here so rude that would not be a Roman? Oh, if any speak, for him I have offended. If you'd rather not be a citizen of Rome, the greatest and most wonderfully prestigious civilization that the world has ever known, if you'd rather not do that, I'm really sorry I've offended you. Who is here so vile that will not love his country? Oh, that one. If any speak, for him I have offended. I pause, this is great, I pause for a reply. This is wonderful. He is telling them that what he and the other conspirators have done is what the mob would have done themselves had they been in their position, and the mob replies to his question, none, Brutus, none. None of us are like that. None of us. To which Brutus replies, then none have I offended. It's clever manipulation of words. It's clever use of words. Unfortunately, he doesn't realize what's ahead. But he has managed, by asking the right questions in the right way at the right time, to get the mob onto his side. Then the body of Caesar arrives, accompanied by Mark Antony. Brutus, seeing what's there, offers the crowd his own death if they wish it. He says, I depart, I'm going now. And it goes on, that as I slew my best lover for the good of Rome, my best friend, the person I love most in the world, I have the same dagger for myself when it shall please my country to need my death. In other words, when you are ready to kill me, here's the dagger and I will do it. Oh, brilliant stroke. Since by now the mob is completely convinced that the conspirators did what the mob would have done themselves, because they are all loyal Romans who do not wish to be slaves. As far as the mob is now concerned, the assassination is clearly just and fair. And the mob respond to his suggestion that he'll kill himself if that's what they want. Live, Brutus, live. They go on to one another, bring him with triumph home to his house, give him a statue with his ancestors. And here's the one, let him be Caesar. Let's put him in the position of the man he's just assassinated. Unfortunately for Brutus, that's not what he actually wants. What he wants is a republic. There's the mob already offering him, as it were, kingship, or at least dictatorship. If Brutus had taken it at that moment, history would have been completely different. But that's not what he wants. He says, no, let me depart alone. And then his biggest mistake. And for my sake, stay here with Antony. Do grace to Caesar's corpse, and grace his speech tending to Caesar's glories, which Mark Antony, by our permission, is allowed to make. I do entreat you, not a man depart, save I alone, till Antony have spoke. Because he believes he's done his job. He leaves them fully assured that the crisis is over, that the mob is now firmly on his side and the side of the conspirators. What he fails to recognize, and what so many politicians and leaders and kings and poets and princes fail to realize, is that if words can shift a mob in one direction, words can shift it in another. Mark Antony, who is or was Caesar's closest ally, has been given permission to offer a eulogy to Caesar, strictly on the condition that he says nothing bad about the conspirators. And by the way, at this point in the webinar, if anybody thinks that words aren't powerful, I'm obviously not getting through to you. It is all about the use of words and how you manipulate them and how you share them. sharing be the important point. So, Mark Antony has made a promise he will not say anything bad about the conspirators. And he begins, when Brutus is gone and he's alone with the mob, and the mob, remember, at this point thinks the killing of Caesar was a great thing. And they don't trust Mark Antony because they know he was Caesar's friend. But he begins in exactly the same tone as Brutus did. Now remember how Brutus began his speech, Romans, countrymen, and lovers. Listen to me. Listen to me, telling them. And that tone of Brutus is the first weakness that Antony plays on. The object of it is to appease the mob by making yourself their equal and them your equal. And by the way, notice that when Antony speaks, he speaks not in prose, but in verse, which is a much more attractive and compulsive rhythm. It's the use of verse, that change from prose to verse, that is the first really interesting step that Shakespeare takes in comparing these two characters. So Antony begins on a very similar tone to Brutus. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Not shut up and listen to me. Lend me your ears. It's a plea. He's asking, please listen to me. Not shut up and listen to me, but please will you listen to me. He's already taken a much gentler, a much more appealing tone. And he then explains his purpose for being there. His one and only purpose for being there. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. And again, one of those phrases that stick in our memories. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred within their bones. So let it be with Caesar. He's basically agreeing there with the theme of Brutus's speech. He goes on. The noble Brutus has told you Caesar was ambitious. If this were so, if, not and it was so, but if this were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously has Caesar answered it. Nothing wrong here. Here I am, under leave of Brutus and the rest, by their permission, with their authority. For Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. That word honorable will become his first weapon. And he is not speaking badly about the conspirators. On the contrary, he is describing them as honorable men, and that if Caesar was what they said he was, he deserved what he got. If. He goes on. He was my friend, faithful and just to me, but Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He goes on. When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept, ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Wasn't Caesar weak for such an ambitious man? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Then he calls to memory something that happened not but a week or so before. You all did see that on the Lupercal particular festival, I thrice presented him a kingly crown which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. 3 examples, brilliantly, of Caesar's lack of ambition, and 3 repetitions of that phrase. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Now, Shakespeare understood, again, one of those points of oratory, that 3 is a potent rhythm for oratory. Saying things in threes has a remarkable way of impinging on the mind, impinging on the memory, and using that construct of 3 examples of Caesar's lack of ambition, 3 examples three repetitions of the phrase that he promised to say, Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is an honorable man. At no point is he going against the rules that he had been given for this particular speech, and yet already he is twisting and twisting and twisting this concept of the reason why Caesar was assassinated, and it doesn't really fit with the facts. Mark Antony now moves on to the next phase, which is to play on the mob's guilt. Brilliant phrase. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? I mean, you used to like him, so at least you can mourn for him. I know he was ambitious, and I know he was a rotten person and all of that, probably deserved what he got, but at least we can mourn him, can't we? And then, hidden their guilt, O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Such a shame, the way you behave. Oh, brilliant stroke. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it comes back to me. Oh, I'm so upset. I am so hurt and upset. But it's working. The mob responds when he takes that moment for himself, with lines like, methinks there's much reason in his sayings. If thou consider rightly of the matter, Caesar has had great wrong. I fear there'll be worse to come in his place. Mark you his words, he would not take the crown. Therefore, 'tis certain he was not ambitious. Mark Antony has already sown the seeds of doubt and the seeds of guilt. And when they look at Mark Antony, in this moment when he's taken pause, poor soul, his eyes are red as fire with weeping. There's not a nobler man in Rome than Antony. 5 minutes ago, Brutus was the noblest man in Rome, and that he should be made Caesar. He should be given a crown. He should be allowed to be dictator. Now, 5 minutes, there's not a nobler man in Rome than Antony. Brutus may have learnt oratory, but Antony is an orator of genius. It is all very well to make a good and clever speech. It is all very well to plaster over the cracks. But if you don't do it with certainty and security, somebody will come and chip it away, because words are power. Antony goes on. O masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong, and I promised I wouldn't. And I'd do Cassius wrong, and I promised I wouldn't. You all know are honorable men. Keeps coming back to that. Honorable is turning into a real weapon. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honorable men. He's keeping his promise so wickedly. He's using that promise to flay the conspirators. Now comes a masterstroke. He understands that for the mob, within the mob, greed and selfishness is always far more potent than loyalty and patriotism. Greed, as the movie once said, is good. He produces a piece of parchment. Here is the parchment with the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. 'Tis his will. Let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read. Oh, yes, he does. But not until they beg him to. And they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds, and dip their napkins in his sacred blood, yea, beg a hair of him for memory, and dying mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy. If you knew what was in this document, you would want a scrap. You'd want the dirt from under Caesar's fingernail to keep as a memory of him. And of course, the mob, being the mob, want to hear what they're getting, naturally. The moment they hear the word will, oh, what's in it for me? What am I getting? Greed is great. Greed is another potent thing. They're shouting out to him, we will hear the will. Read it, Mark Antony. The will, we'll hear Caesar's will. That's all they want to know. What's in it for me? What did he leave me? But Mark Antony is far too good a politician to let them off the hook yet. He doesn't just want their greed. He wants their anger. So he plays it so smoothly. Have patience, gentle friends. I must not read it. It is not meet that you know how Caesar loved you. I will not inflame you. It will make you mad. That's exactly what he's trying to do. 'Tis good you know not that you are his heirs. For if you should, oh, what would come of it? You are Caesar's heirs, this ambitious, dreadful person that the conspirators, these honorable men, have slaughtered. You are his heirs. At any point, he could have unleashed them, but no, he's building it and building it. He's using the power of imagery, the power of words, to build something within that mob. And the mob responds to him. Greed in their hearts now. Read the will. We will hear it, Antony. You shall read us the will, Caesar's will. They're not saying anything about anything, not about the murder, not about anything. All they want to know is, what's in the will? What do we get? Antony is building this fever pitch that he knows will eventually materialize, but he's doing it in his time, not in theirs. Will you be patient, he says. Will you stay a while? I've o'ershot myself when I tell you of it. I fear I have wronged these honorable men, back to the honorable men again, whose daggers have stabbed Caesar. I do fear it. These honorable men whose daggers have stabbed Caesar, the Caesar that wrote this will for you. He's got them now. He's got them. They are completely in his hands. And they respond. They were traitors, honorable men. There. Read the will, the testament. They were traitors. What did Caesar give us? They were traitors. What did Caesar give us? It's a magnificent turnaround. And it's taken place within basically a few words. The mob screams out, they were villains, murderers. The will, read the will. The change in thinking that the conspirators, that they all accepted doing a just and honorable thing, are now traitors, is completely tied to the reading of the will. Anger and greed now working together, a very potent formula. And now he does another brilliant tactical maneuver. He asks their permission to stand among them, to stand with them. Can I come down? He's been up on this pedestal. Can I come down? Yeah, come on down. Yeah, come on down. He's one of us. Great old Antony. Great guy. Knew his mother. It's the most wonderful use of words that he now uses, and it's backed up by superb images, tying an image to a thought, an image to a thing, a word covering all of those things. Honorable men has now become a phrase of scorn. Honorable men. He's twisted it and turned it. And he still doesn't show them the will. What he shows them is Caesar's mantle, the garment he was wearing. If you have tears, prepare to shed them now. You all do know this mantle. I remember the first time Caesar ever put it on a summer evening. Oh, on a summer evening in his tent that day he overcame the Nervii. Look, in this place ran Cassius' dagger through. Oh. And he takes them through each of the stab wounds, pointing them out, until he comes to the stab wound inflicted by the mob's previous hero. Through this, the well-beloved Brutus stabbed. This is where your hero stabbed Caesar. And as he plucked his cursed steel away, mark how the blood of Caesar followed it as rushing out of doors, to be resolved if Brutus so unkindly knocked or no. That image of, oh, Brutus, and the blood gushing out to greet him. For Brutus, he goes on, as you know, was Caesar's angel. Judge you gods how dearly Caesar loved him. This was the most unkindest cut of all. It is a brilliant use of a double superlative. You should not say most unkindest. You should say most unkind or unkindest. When you put the two together, it's bad grammar, even for Shakespeare. But it is absolutely brilliant because it is the most unkindest. It is an absolute. It is an absolute of absolutes. And at this moment, he has turned against Brutus. He has let the mob discover that Brutus is not an honorable man. That Brutus, in fact, betrayed and murdered this man who loved him so much, Caesar. It's brilliant use of verse. And verse has its own power. Verse has a way of impinging on your brain, staying there. For when the noble Caesar saw him stab, ingratitude more than traitor's arms quite vanquished him. Ingratitude vanquished him. Not stab wounds, not murder, not any of that. Ingratitude quite vanquished him. Then burst his mighty heart, even at the base of Pompey's statue, which all the while ran blood. Oh, he's building it now. Great Caesar fell. It's like this image of a great oak tree falling in the forest. Oh, what a fall was there, my countrymen. Then you and I and all of us fell down while bloody treason flourished all around. This is how words can invoke a scene. And the mob are seeing it. They're actually seeing the assassination in their mind's eye. He is painting that picture. Whether it is exactly what happened or not doesn't matter. It's what the mob see because of the way the words are presented to them, as if they were there. And Antony goes on, one extra step, one brilliant extra step. Oh, now you weep, and I perceive you feel the dint of pity. These are gracious drops. Kind souls, you lovely people. What, weep you when you but behold our Caesar's vesture wounded? Look you here. Here is himself, marred as you see, with traitors, and he shows them the body. And the mob goes mad. O piteous spectacle, O noble Caesar, woeful day, traitors and villains, most bloody sight, we will be revenged. Revenge about, seek, burn, fire, kill, stay, let not a traitor live. This mob has been turned. This mob has been made angry. But Antony's still got one further card to play. One more set of potent words. He has brought their anger to fever pitch. He's got one more card. You have forgot the will I told you of. Here is the will, and under Caesar's seal, to every Roman citizen, he gives to every several man 75 drachmas. It's half a year's income. Most noble Caesar, we'll revenge his death. Royal Caesar. Royal? 1 minute they're totally pro-republic, and now in this moment Caesar is royal. Moreover, goes on Antony, he's left you all his walks, his private arbors, his new planted orchards on this side of the Tiber. He's left them to you. He's given you all his gardens, all those public parks that you paid for, but he claimed are now yours. To all you and your heirs forever. Common pleasures to walk abroad and recreate yourselves. You can have a wonderful time in Rome now, thanks to Caesar. Here was a Caesar, when comes such another? And the mob runs riot. Words have made them wild. Words have released both anger and greed. Words have turned them loose. Antony himself comments on that. Now let it work. Mischief thou art afoot. Take thou what course thou wilt. Now that's an interesting phrase because he means it, because he has no way of predicting it. Take what course thou wilt. What is this mischief that he's speaking of? It's what he wants, chaos. And chaos is another wonderful weapon. In a chaotic world, anything is possible, including the taking of power. When chaos is out on the streets, when chaos is everywhere around him, he and a couple of others can quietly and gently take power, take control. Because he knows, terribly important point, that a mob doesn't think. It has no plan. It can and will be led, and a mob is cruel. Mob, in fact, is the cruelest of all things in that sense. It said, Mark Antony had said earlier, cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Havoc. Havoc is another aspect of chaos. It is an ultimate mischief in that sense. And using his words, he has released this mischief. Which leads me to the short scene I referred to at the beginning. And it's the very next scene in the play. And I think it's one of the most frightening scenes that Shakespeare ever wrote. Every time I read this, and any time I've seen it, it sends a shiver, because it is about the mob, the havoc, the chaos, the mischief that he has released through those two things, greed and anger. With the mob running riot through the city, out of control, with no real leadership, and with no real leadership, every bully becomes a petty tyrant, becomes indeed the very thing that they are rioting against. Every bully becomes a dictator. In this scene, the mob ravaging the streets come across a perfectly innocent man, Cinna the poet. And he's just a passerby. He's just Cinna the poet on the street, going home, minding his own business. But wrong place, wrong time, and the wrong name. The mob, or patriots, if you wish, citizens, whatever, they arrive, find him, and question him. What's your name? Where are you going? Where do you dwell? Are you a married man or a bachelor? I mean, really? Are you a married man or a bachelor? Answer every man directly, aye and briefly, aye and wisely, aye and truly. And Cinna tries his best. When you are surrounded by an angry mob, and it's a lot angrier than carrying pitchforks and saying to the windmill, we are talking about a lethal, uncontrolled corporate anger. And he tries his best. What is my name? Where am I going? Where do I dwell? Am I married or a bachelor? And then to answer every man directly, briefly, wisely, and truly. Right, well, wisely, I say, I am a bachelor. Wrong answer. Because the second citizen responds, that's as much as to say, they are fools that marry. You'll bear a bang from me for that. Go on, directly. Cinna carries on. Directly, I'm going to Caesar's funeral. First citizen. Now, they've all been at Caesar's funeral. As a friend or an enemy? Cinna, as a friend. All right, that's okay. We're on Caesar's side now. Where do you live? For your dwelling, briefly. Cinna, briefly, I dwell by the Capitol. I mean, I'm on my way home as well. Third citizen, your name, truly. Truly, he responds, my name is Cinna. Another wrong answer. Why? Because one of the conspirators was called Cinna. And the first citizen responds to him, tear him to pieces, he's a conspirator. And the poor little poet screams out, I am Sinner the poet, I am Sinner the poet. Tear him for his bad verses, tear him for his bad verses. His name Sinner, pluck but his name out of his heart and turn him going. Tear him for his bad verses. I think that is possibly the most frightening line that Shakespeare ever wrote, because it demonstrates the absolute uncontrollable nature of the mob. The mob that has been created by words will now use any words that they come across to satisfy their own bloodlust, anger, and greed. And without overstating it, we're very much aware of such citizen arrests, such mob behavior, such questions, and the difficulty of having the wrong answers. The mob always has a life of its own, persuaded always by a weapon they do not understand. But this weapon has incredible power over them. Abraham Lincoln knew it. Churchill knew it. Hitler knew it. Kennedy knew it. But so did Shakespeare and Sophocles, and in our own time, Beckett, Pinter, Miller, Albee, even August Wilson. Every successful politician, poet, and teacher has known it for as long as we have had language. The most powerful weapon known to humankind is words. And that's it. There is my little homily for today on the genius of Shakespeare. And I often use that word to describe him, the genius. But it is a genius because it is an absolute understanding of what we are and why we are what we are, and how ideas, how words can change us, can shift us. Without that, that ability of words to cause change. One of the great definitions of magic I was reading many years ago, I think it was a legal definition in the UK, that magic is the ability to cause change to occur in the natural as consequence of the will. And that's what words are. Words are magic. They can cause change. And when they are manipulated and used cleverly, they can change the entire course of the earth. They can change the world. Words can change the world. Words can certainly change the nature of humanity. So there we are. We've got a few questions there. I will, if we have questions, I will do my best. If I get an email address, I'll respond to them. If you disagree with me, please tell me. If you agree with me, please tell me. If you're not sure, ask me again and I'll explain it. But do let us know what you think. So that's it for this week. There you are. There's the email address, marketing@picttheatre.org. If you've got any questions at all, send me an email. We will, I promise, get back to you. I do respond to every email that comes in. We are always looking for this webinar series. It is always free. It will always be free for as long as I am sitting here in front of my bookshelf. This will always be free. But if you want to make a donation, please consider it. And as I always say, every dollar counts. It doesn't matter how small or large. I don't care in what currency it is. It can be dollars, it can be euros, zlotys, whatever you have. Please, and it doesn't have to be a vast amount, but every donation does count. In these difficult times, when it's, for all theatres, very difficult to raise box office income, we need to be ready for when we can all come back with a vengeance, hopefully before the end of the year. Next week, I'm going to be discussing farce, and the topic is the fact that there's nothing funny about farce, which should intrigue you. That'll be next week, and the week after that, I'm bringing back my guest from Ireland, Aoife Spillane-Hinks, and we're going to be talking about the poverty plays of the Irish writer John B. Keane. So that's the next 2 weeks lined up. We'll have more information about what follows that next week. In the meantime, it is wonderful to know that you're out there. Welcome back, as I say. We'll be here every Friday. Let's hope that you'll be there too. And do let us know what you think about this new platform, how easy you think it is, or how difficult, or what any problems you have. And remember that from now on, you'll be able to find the webinars. If you want to check back on them or tell your friends to look at them, they'll be on our YouTube channel. In the meantime, have a very safe week. Keep up the good work, wear your mask, wash your hands, and most of all, be safe. Bye now.